Hello, everyone. Welcome to my Session 6 teaching memo. The course is now half over, so we're over the hump and we're heading for December. It's been a rainy 2 days here in Dutchess County. Doctor and I drove to see my daughter and my two granddaughters, one of which is just a month old. Actually 3 weeks. And I am going to show you a picture. There they are. There's my daughter and Etta, who is 3 weeks old, and Reagan, who has no front teeth at all, bottom or lower, is 5 years old. And of course, there is Dr. Tom. Halloween is upon us. For the first time since we moved into our house, which was 2011, I am going to hand out candy because it starts about 4 o'clock. Dr. Laura doesn't get home till well after 5. I'm not big on giving out candy. Sugar is inflammatory. Also, I always have some left over and I end up eating it. I have no willpower when it comes to candy in the house. So we just don't have any in our house. So now there's a bag, BJ's, a bag of 250 Nestle's Crunches. I'll just have to survive it. I'm just happy I won't be in Lower Manhattan on Tuesday. That's tomorrow, for the festivities there. I have taught in Manhattan on October 31st, and it's a little crazy. I have to try to avoid the people. They think I'm in costume. So enough of that. Enough of Halloween. Enough of the rain. Sun's coming out this afternoon. So I'm going to combine Session 6 and housekeeping because we didn't have a discussion board this week, so there's not a lot of things I can talk about. You should be filling out your vocabulary in your own words. As I mentioned, every teaching memo. There are many of those vocabulary words in the reliability, validity, and absence of bias or fairness chapters. Validity is an important topic in test construction, as you can see from Popham's chapter 4 and chapter 5, I believe it is, in Cohen and Spencer, as well as my presentation. Remember, if your test has validity, then it should automatically have reliability. And also, a test can't be valid if it doesn't have reliability. So those two things kind of are interchangeable. The only thing that you need to know that's different is that reliability does not assume validity. As you saw in my presentation, you have all those dots in one area. That's reliable, but doesn't mean it's valid because it's not measuring the rest of the bullseye. So keep that in mind. You should worry about, Popham says you shouldn't pay too much attention to reliability. I mean, you're not going to give retest reliability. You're not going to test for internal consistency where all your questions are answering consistently or like they're measuring the same thing. But you do want to make sure that all those things that make a test unreliable aren't happening, like poorly worded questions, kids not being able to finish the test. Okay, those are ways that a test becomes unreliable, that you don't get consistent results over time. If your tests correctly align with your learning targets, you should be able to make valid inferences about the results. So that's good content-related validity. The other type of validity that you may encounter is predictive validity. And I know this was a question on one of the tests. Predictive validity is does this test predict future performance? Like a preschool screening, does it predict future performance in kindergarten? The SATs, does it predict success in college, or is it just the first semester of college? and then it's only 25% of a person's success is based on that. Um, you are most likely to encounter this type of validity when using assessments that will indicate the probability of a child's success. So that, as I mentioned, that could be kindergarten, or it could be any test that you give that's going to predict future success. Um, you should have begun the process of creating your selected response test. That's why you had no discussion board this week. The only homework you had was a quiz. And that first step is by writing learning targets. You got to become familiar with the EdTPA. As I mentioned in the last teaching memo, you should look at the assessment rubrics. I believe there are 5 of them. And that's what you should try to create your tests around. Many of you are going to create test questions. How many videos? How long should it be? What are the 3 chapters of the special ed handbook? Those questions aren't going to help anybody dig into the, as Popham would say, the viscera of the selected or of the EdTPA special education. Now, some of you aren't going to take the EdTPA special education, but the basics of all the EdTPAs are pretty much the same. In the special ed EdTPA, you have to pick a focused learner, and so there's a little difference there. But the guts of it are pretty much the same. You should begin the process by creating learning targets or objectives which are specific and measurable. Many of you are going to say things like will understand, will know, will become familiar with. Those are not specific. What does understand mean? How do you assess understanding? Well, if somebody can list something, somebody can compare and contrast, somebody can make inferences based on material read. Those are specific and you can measure them. Yes, I know he can make inferences because he answered this inference question. Yes, I know he can accurately define 6 or 7 key vocabulary words. So you have to keep that in mind because many of you are going to write very vague learning targets that you won't be able to align questions with. That is one of the things that you really need to focus on in writing your selected response test. And I'm going to talk more about that in my assignment video, which is coming up. The last thing I want to mention is that I goofed on the Session 6 hard copy of the reliability and validity quiz. It has since been updated. Remember, if you have questions on any of the quizzes, use the quiz discussion board. Many of you were writing me about questions you had. Well, I don't think this is right, Dr. Tom. Those are the questions you need to ask in the quiz discussion boards. I know in one of them, I even went in and said, well, it wasn't on the hard copy, but in the online test, there was a 5th choice for question number 6, which many people were struggling with. So that's it for this part of the video. I will return with information on this week's assignments, which you really need to watch.